This podcast represents my opinion and the opinion of my guests. This is not medical advice, and I am not establishing a patient-physician relationship with any listener. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each patient is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions you may have.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Not Your Doc podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa, and I'm here with our producer, Seth, today. Say hey, Seth.
Hello, everybody.
Hey. And of course, Mr. Not Your Doc himself, Dr. Charles Tadros.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So we are joined today by another special guest. It's been a little while since we've had a guest on the show, so I'm very excited to get back into that. Mm-hmm. This person is actually an acquaintance of Dr. Tadros from way back in the day.
A friend.
And yeah, a friend. So, Dr. Tadros, will you please introduce
Sure.
Judge Jo Beth Weber to us?
Yeah. Thank you, Vanessa. Judge Jo Beth Weber has been kind enough to come speak about some of her experiences, especially about mental health as it kind of crosses over into legal issues that come before her as a judge. Judge Weber has been a friend of mine since probably the late 70s, early 80s. She serves as the resident circuit judge in Jefferson County since 2012, and I'm sure she'll correct me if I'm wrong about any of my dates and stuff like that. She currently presides over a criminal docket. We'll understand what a docket means, and the juvenile delinquency docket, and the Wayne County and Jefferson County, these are in Southern Illinois, drug courts. Before she came was elevated to the bench, Judge Weber clerked for this is all the pedigree that's important for where people trained. But she clerked for 4 different appellate court judges, and she served as an associate general counsel for Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and deputy of the State Appellate Defender's Office in Mount Vernon, Illinois. There's a bunch of other things that are important, but I'm going to get down to the Illinois Supreme Court had appointed Judge, and I'm not sure if this is still active, Judge Weber as one of 5 judges to chair the Illinois Mental Health Task Force. So she is. She also, because her kindness extends forever, she's also currently, I believe, a chairperson for the Second Circuit's Pro Bono Committee, and was named the chairperson for the Women's Justice Task Force way back in 2018. Am I about right, Judge Weber?
You did it before I could. I have to keep saying that in my brain. You're our first judge,
Yeah,
Judge Weber,
right.
So we're accustomed to calling people doctor.
Am I close?
Yes, that's good. Thank you, Dr. Tadros.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Well, welcome. Well, thank you. I'm interested in everything. I'm always interested in talking about everything, but we're going to focus. Vanessa will help me focus, et cetera. Jo Beth and Judge Weber. I'll say Judge Weber. Can you tell me how you came up into from being an attorney to being a judge? Is this something you planned, and then eventually how you migrated into doing some of these pro bono work, but also the drug courts, which is what crosses over between mental health, substance abuse, and some of the stuff that we do in our clinic?
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much for asking me to be part of your program today. I do really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Well, I was an attorney for over 20 years, actually, before I became a judge.
Uh-huh.
And one of the reasons why I wanted to become a judge was because, the county that I grew up in is actually where I'm practicing as a judge right now.
Oh, that's great.
And I wanted to change the way that we were doing some things in the court system here in Jefferson County. I saw that we had a lot of people who had mental health issues and substance abuse issues, and you just keep seeing the same people over and over again, unless you somehow try to intervene and try to do something different than just sending people to Department of Corrections over and over again.
Yeah.
And a lot of people with mental health issues, are in custody and are jailed from time to time, and just having a desire and a wish to be able to try to get them treatment instead of punishing them for this behavior was really the impetus behind me wanting to become a judge in the first place.
Yeah.
So, in Illinois, judges are elected. And so, I just went door to door, knocked on people's doors and told them, my ideas about things. And lo and behold, I was elected in 2012. And then I ran for retention in 2018. It's a 6-year term, and then you run for retention in Illinois. And so anyway, that's kind of what brought me where I am today and why I wanted to be a judge.
So really, a large part was mental health and some of the recidivism that you saw with some of these people that came before the bench.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's the most difficult thing to try to figure out is, did this person have a mental health issue before we started using drugs and becoming addicted, or were they addicted and then the mental health issues started, after that?
Well, I'm impressed.
So that's always a big...
Number one, I'm super impressed that you care that deeply and that far back. That is a big deal. People self-treating through a variety of techniques, including substance abuse. Yeah.
Can I ask a couple of questions about Jefferson County, Judge Weber? Okay, yeah. What's the population of Jefferson County like? Kind of like
the population in our...
Yeah, in your county.
Did you say population in our county is probably around 50,000 people?
Okay.
And then I live in Mount Vernon, which is the county seat of Jefferson County. Mount Vernon probably has, close to 20,000 people that live in the city of Mount Vernon.
Okay.
So,
yeah. And what about socioeconomic demographics? Or is it pretty like middle class? Are there more working class people?
More working class people. We actually have a big tire factor here, Continental Tire, which is one of our biggest employers, and then Walgreens Distribution Center is a large employer here too.
Gotcha.
And then the 2 hospitals that we have in here, in Mount Vernon, actually, employ a lot of people too.
Sure. So, in Jefferson County, are there a lot of resources already available for people who are seeking treatment for mental health or drug addiction?
No. In fact, we are a very rural community. If you looked at the makeup of the entire Second Circuit, Jefferson County is just one of 12 counties in the Second Circuit.
Oh, okay. Yes. I apologize.
Yeah. Just to kind of give you an idea.
Yeah.
We are considered a really large city and county within those 12 counties that I just mentioned. So, but we only have one treatment center, Comprehensive Connections, in Mount Vernon. It's been in Mount Vernon ever since I can remember.
Yeah.
But it is, we have to have a treatment provider on our drug court team. And we have to have that person in court every Friday. We kind of started out using them, and then we found out they really couldn't devote, a person to come in here and sit in court, most of the day for drug court and devote themselves just to that from their facility.
Right.
So unfortunately, we're not able to use Comprehensive Connections, all of the time for people. So we send them all over different places in Southern Illinois, including Comprehensive Connections from time to time. So we do have a lot of different people, different places that we use. And then they go to a halfway house or sober living home afterwards for a short period of time. Then before they come back to the community, if that's what they choose to do. Just to kind of give you an idea of what people in drug court do.
Sure.
Can you start us at the very beginning? Drug court, is that automatic that every circuit or every county will have a drug court that people can avail themselves of, or is it something that you chose to bring up?
It is actually something that I was very passionate about when I was running for office. And you are not required to have a drug court in your county in the state of Illinois right now. And so anyway, I was very interested in doing that. And so, did a lot of research while I was running for office to try to figure it out. And so, we started it in 2013 in Jefferson County. And, you know, drug court has been around. Even in 2013, it had probably been around for 30 years. They started the first drug court in Miami, Florida, a very long time ago. So it wasn't a new concept at the time when I started it, but it was very new to our small community where I'm from.
Yeah.
So
did you go sit watch other you said you did research? Did you physically go sit and watch other courts how they ran,
yes.
et cetera? Yeah.
I actually did both. I did a lot of research, and then I actually did go and visit a couple different drug courts before we started our drug court in Jefferson County.
I don't think people perceive judges. They see judges in dark cloaks and sitting at a bench, and I don't think they see them as being as active as as what you just described, just for this one piece of many things that you've done. So typically a drug court, this is a team approach, and could you just kind of describe what it tries to do that's different than the typical legal system?
Yes, drug court is a treatment court, and by that what I mean is you have your traditional, you know, prosecutor and defense counsel in the courtroom that are on the drug court team. But in addition to that, we have a treatment provider for drug court, and then we have a drug court probation officer. And so in addition to, well, basically when you go to court, I mean, most people, if they're, you know, accused of doing something, they're scared when they come to the courtroom.
Sure.
They have a desire to lie about what they did because they don't want to be in trouble.
Sure.
But the difference between drug court and regular court is that when they come in here, they have to admit what they did. And that's the first step toward recovery. Yeah. And admit what you did, stop the lying and manipulative behaviors that addicts have. And it's just not something that's unique to any particular person in drug court.
Nope.
It's unique to drug addicts in general. That's been my experience. Master manipulators.
It's I tell people I tell people they can't tell the truth. They want to tell the truth, and between their brain and their lips somehow it gets twisted into a lie. Yeah, they're good people, but no. Yes, please. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, please.
You're exactly right. So when I first started drug court, that's who we had on the drug court team: prosecutor, defense counsel, treatment provider, probation, and the judge. And then after a few years, I got the police force interested in being on the drug court team too. So we had a couple of police officers who were on the drug court team. Wow. Unfortunately, I feel like the law enforcement, some of them, I'm not going to say all of them in our community, but some of the law enforcement in our community are not, they're not really supportive of drug court. And so because of that, it's changed the makeup of our drug court team, and we no longer have police officers on our drug court team. I would love to have some police officers on our drug court team. But there seems to be a disconnect between the training that we receive, which means that, you know, people can relapse and recover, and we don't just kick them out the first time they relapse. Right. And some of our officers don't understand that, and they don't understand what we do because they don't buy into evidence-based practices. Right. And
so they prefer to have a zero tolerance policy like they would with, you know, violence or any other kind of like violation while you're awaiting trial or anything like that, right?
I couldn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, so I was just wondering, the police officers probably prefer a zero tolerance type policy, like they're used to, you know, seeing other people who are being tried for, you know, violent crimes or anything like that. There would not be, you know, tolerance for, you know, slipping up one time or not meeting a requirement. Is that kind of the thing that you run into?
Yes, definitely. And, you know, even with training, a lot of them don't really understand that that's what we're supposed to do, and that relapse is part of recovery sometimes for some people. They kind of get a glimpse of what their life could be like again if they started down this road and didn't stop. And so, you know, if we put up with people doing that 2 or 3 times, then, you know, I think they think it's kind of a joke, unfortunately. Yeah. But I am of the mindset that it is part of it sometimes. But I mean, I've had many people come into the drug court program that never slip up. You know, we never
Sure.
catch them with a positive drug test, even though they're, and just so everyone understands, I should have said this too. When you're in drug court, the way that our program works in Jefferson County, there are 5 phases to the drug court. And you're basically working each phase of the program to get to the next phase. But what these phases consist of is, like in the beginning of it, you're going to drug court once a week. You're going to treatment and probation appointments several times a week. You're being randomly drug tested several times a week. You're required to go to many NA meetings.
Narcotics
AA
Anonymous.
meetings, you're allowed to go to that too. There are a lot of appointments. You know, we might say that you are mandated and ordered to get mental health treatment, and then they have to get, you know, an appointment. So they basically, in the very beginning of the program, it's really difficult for people, especially if they don't want to give up control and they don't really want to do what other people tell them to do. And I tell them from the very beginning, if you're not willing to do that, this is not the program for you.
Sure.
Because, you know, if you're sitting in a jumpsuit with handcuffs on, you're not making good decisions for yourself. So I'm going to take this group of people who are on the drug court team who have, you know, different expertises, and we are all going to get together and we are going to decide what's best for you. So if you're the kind of person that can accept that we're going to make good decisions for you, even though you might be mad about it sometimes, this is not the program for you. So we determine where they're going to treatment. We determine where they're going to live when they get out of treatment. We determine whether we require them to get a job. Or go to college or get their GED. I have some people in drug court who are actually in college right now. That wouldn't have been able to do that otherwise, you know. We have, so those are the kinds of things, like where you can live, who you can't be around. There are a lot of things that we decide for our people in drug court. And so, and the whole idea behind every decision we make is whatever's in the best interest of our client. And once we make that decision, you know, like in the beginning, it was really hard as the drug court judge to know if people, you know, if they were mad, you know, it made you feel kind of bad. And I know that kind of sounds silly, you know, but I was a new judge at the time when I started this, you know, and you also can't let people manipulate you. And I allowed that in the beginning of drug court, you know, I mean, I don't allow that now. But,
well, we're,
you know,
we're
I mean,
trusting by nature. I mean, human beings think that other people are going to be upfront, and you know we're going to exchange stuff because we're honest with each other. That's how we get along. But yeah, of course.
Right. So that's kind of how drug court operates. And then after you've been in the first phase for like 30 to 45 days, if you're meeting all the requirements in that phase, then we allow them to ask to move up to the next phase. And they just have to go through and basically check off, you know, everything they've been doing that they're supposed to be doing and ask to move up. And then the drug court team votes in private on whether or not they will be allowed to move up. And then they, you know, typically get to move up to the next phase because they know they're meeting the requirements, and that's why they're asking. And then at the end of the 5, and just so you know how it works over time, like, you know, phase 1 you're going every week, phase 2 you're coming every 2 weeks, phase 3 you're coming every 3 weeks. It's like your steps, everything you do is stepped down, and it's not as much as it was in the previous phase, because we're kind of trying to teach you how to live on your own in this world when you get out of drug court.
And Vanessa and I tend to, I mean, that's what we see. A lot of people are, you're right, they're quote unquote out of control, but they're controlling stuff, like you said. They look like out of control to the rest of us, but they're controlling stuff. They're doing this stuff. But we can come back to the question about free will and other things. Not everybody that has a drug problem is eligible for drug court, correct? I mean, not just because they flunk out from these 5 phases, but some people
they have to apply. Yeah. Is that correct?
That is correct, and it usually comes through the public defender's office because they have, you know, most contact with that person.
Right.
Some of the referrals can come from the state's attorney's office. It can come from the judge. The referral can come from anyone, even anyone in the community. Actually, if they would come forward and ask. But just so you know, just everyone that's referred doesn't get accepted.
Gotcha.
They have to meet certain criteria. They have to be what we consider high risk and high need. These are people who cannot hold a job. They cannot keep from going for a day without using drugs, and it's just totally wrecked their entire life. Most of our people have a long history in the criminal justice system.
Okay.
We don't usually take people who are just getting started using drugs and getting in trouble. There are other programs for that.
Okay,
Okay.
We have
gotcha.
TASK, which is Treatment Alternatives for Safer Communities in Illinois. It's called TASK for first-time offenders that get in trouble for things like that.
Got it.
We take people who have a long history. We typically take people who are older. I sound like a liar today because I just accepted an 18-year-old in drug court who had a really long history in juvenile court.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just have to meet some objective criteria that we have, and if they meet the criteria and they have the right attitude to let us lead them along down the path, to recovery, then we do accept them into drug court. And I think that too, when I was talking about the officers earlier, I think that's also a source of contention with that group of people, because they don't understand if they meet the criteria, we are supposed to accept them, whether they like it or not.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Gotcha.
So that begs a question for me. I mean, the structure, I love that you said drug court is a treatment court. And it really sounds like you set up the team and the structure to really set people up for success if they're willing to, follow directions and give up some of that control and really work the program. So how is drug court funded? How are you able to do all of these things?
Well, in the beginning, we didn't have money for a lot of the things that we needed. And it was very frustrating. We didn't have a lot of the resources that we needed for drug court. So what happened was, we've had two things that have really changed that for us for the better. The main thing that has changed it is that SIU had a rural health grant that we've been able to obtain in our county.
That's great.
And that grant actually helped us with transporting people to treatment and back. It has helped them with all kinds of things like clothing for interviews or certain kind of boots for certain jobs that need steel-toed boots. All kinds of things. I could go into several things that it would cover, but just normally things your insurance wouldn't cover, and that we would need the money for. That rural health grant has provided for us. Unfortunately, we don't have that anymore as of this coming year, from what I understand. But that was really helpful over the last several years. And then back in 2017, I created the Drug Court Coalition of Jefferson County. And this is a 501c3 organization designed to help fund some of the needs of our clients that we have in drug court.
Wow.
And so through that organization, we've been able to fund several different things for drug court. It doesn't raise a lot of money or anything like that, but it is able to fund a lot of the things that we want to do in drug court.
Sure.
So, and because drug court also, and I should have mentioned this probably, but I can sanction people, for bad behavior, or I can reward good behavior too. That's something that's very different from a regular court.
Right.
Yeah.
Which might sound silly to the public, but this is what the evidence shows works for people who are addicts. And so some of the rewards that I can give people range from praise all of the way up to, like financial incentives even, because we have money through this coalition, and even through the rural health grant. So we can give gift cards for different things. We've given a YMCA membership to somebody who really wanted to work out. We have to just individually figure out what means the most to them.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then try to help them with that.
Create those incentives. That's amazing. This seems like it requires a lot of administration. Is that something that falls on your shoulders, or do you have a program administrator that helps with these things?
No, when you live in a county the size of mine, you are you're the judge, the program administrator,
Yeah.
the secretary. You get to do it all.
I'm sure you're extremely good at it.
That's awesome.
Judge Weber, you're probably good at all the jobs, even if you don't want
Well,
them.
Well,
Is there a
I don't
difference?
know. Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Is there?
well, I was just going to say, go ahead.
Is there a difference in terms of the different types of drugs? And it's interesting. Yeah, most of us would have thought drug court would be for the young and new offenders. So it's nice to know that there's something else for those people. Is different types of drugs? Do they carry different weights in terms of the patterns and the weights of problems that they carry with them? With alcohol versus.
It's really.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's really interesting over the last 11 years that I've been a judge how different that answer would be over time. But heroin was a really big thing when I first became a judge 11 years ago, and then a lot of people started dying and overdosing on heroin. And then I'm not saying people don't use heroin anymore, but it's less likely that that's what they're hooked on.
Okay.
Methamphetamine is probably the most prevalent thing that we have in Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
The thing that we see the most.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's as you know, in certain parts of Missouri, it's also we have quite a bit of meth issues.
Yeah, certainly. I wonder, are there, yes, sorry. Can you tell us a little bit more about the success rate of the program? You were talking about evidence-based approaches to helping people with addiction kind of move through that, learn new life skills. What kind of success is the court experiencing? And is that in line with the success of perhaps other drug courts that you've modeled your program after?
How do you measure? Yeah, how do you measure success? And
Well, the way I measure success is every graduation, I have the probation department look at our statistics, and the statistics I'm looking at is how many people have we accepted into drug court up to this point, and how many have we had to remove during that same period, of time. So just so you know, it's consistently been 65% of the people that we accept into drug court successfully graduate from drug court. 35% of those people get removed from drug court, and they end up going to prison, unfortunately.
Wow.
But the more relevant statistic, in my opinion, is out of these people who graduate from drug court, how many of them get rearrested?
Sure.
For a felony,
Okay.
a serious case. I'm not talking about a traffic offense or,
Right.
something like that. But I mean, it's consistently been around 95% of the people who successfully graduate from drug court do not get rearrested for a felony offense.
Yeah, it's enormous.
And that statistic is much better than
Yeah.
nationally. I think it's around 85%.
Wow.
It's in the 80%.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
That's dramatic.
How many people have gone through the program during your tenure total?
I think we've had probably I shouldn't even answer that at this
Right.
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
More than 100 people.
More than 100.
I know.
Okay.
I mean, it's a half. Yeah, it's more than 100.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a half-day docket, and that doesn't sound like very many people. But just so you know, they're in here originally for 30 months is how long they're in drug court.
I was
And it
gonna
just
say,
changed
yeah.
in about a year ago, and it's 24 months now. So
Wow.
just so you know, they were in here for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Once they get started.
That's a big load. That's a big
That's a long time to support someone through that is, really high need and needs a lot of touches from specialists. That's really incredible.
How do your other friends? I'm assuming that you only have friends who are judges. How do other judges who may not or may not have a drug court in their circuit? How do they respond, or do you talk about it?
I think they feel like it's a lot of like hand holding and kumbaya moments, and I guess it is kind of,
Sure.
But on the other hand, I don't get a lot of job satisfaction from sending people to prison and having them get out and start using drugs again and going right back to prison. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
So I get a lot of pleasure and I give a lot of job satisfaction out of helping someone get through this and then seeing them out in the community, taking care of their kids, being good moms, being good dads, being good sons and daughters, being good people in the community who are actually volunteering and helping other people through recovery.
That's incredible.
And, you know, we're not just affecting like this generation of people.
Right.
We're affecting every generation that comes after them.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
So to me, it's like makes the most sense as far as trying to change people's behavior and make them productive citizens in your community that, you know, can be proud of their lives.
A lot of these people have lost connection with not only with their own physical body but socially and in terms of their health, and they've lost connection with work and all sorts of other things, and that's what's the gap, the emptiness you fill if you didn't already have mental illness before. Now you really do, and you fill it with any dopamine that can make things better for a little bit at whatever cost. Yeah.
Can we ask a couple of questions about mental health specifically? Obviously, that's a big piece. If your plan is to address the problems that come from the behavior of using drugs, the underlying condition that causes people to start using them in the first place is where you got to go. Was that something that you knew from the outset that you needed to work on? And what kind of clinical support did you seek out to make that part of the treatment?
I think I did know in the beginning that would be an issue, the mental health challenges that we're facing. You know, most of my people have dual diagnosis. And so it takes a while to figure out after people are off drugs whether they really do have a mental health issue or whether it's the effects of the drugs that are making them appear to maybe have mental health issues.
I want to our audience dual diagnosis means an addiction plus something else, addiction plus bipolar, addiction plus depression, addiction plus schizophrenia. So the dual diagnosis, and harder to treat, obviously. And oftentimes, whenever I was in training, psychiatrists would sometimes not want to give people medicines until they were clean and sober, because they didn't know what they were treating. If they were seeing spiders and yelling and biting and hitting and threatening, they couldn't tell if it's the drugs coming off the drugs. So they'd have to be clean for a few weeks to maybe a month before they would,
which is nearly an impossible bar to meet. So the mental health issues just continue being untreated.
Yeah. Right. So that's very hard from clinical. You sound like a
sometimes.
Say again. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and sometimes, you know, people are in drug court for quite some time before we say, oh, you know, this person needs some mental health treatment.
Yes.
Because, like you said, we're wearing off of the drugs and trying to figure out what it is here that this person actually needs. We try to assess them and figure out everything they need, you know, and...
Do you have a clinician? I mean, you have somebody. You said that somebody from kind of a rehabilitation background, but do you have clinicians, social workers, or mental health professionals, or psychiatrists, physicians? You have somebody that comes to court or is accessible to the court. I know there's a lot of barriers to mental health. Yeah.
Right. I actually have a substance abuse counselor that comes to court every time we have court for drug court. And if we have someone that needs more serious mental health treatment, we always have them obtain an evaluation. We help them make the appointment for that.
Wow.
And then based on that evaluation, whatever that evaluator, basically psychiatrist most of the time, whatever the recommendations are, then is what they're required to follow while they're in drug court.
Yeah.
And are those patients getting those evaluations and obtaining care through their own insurance or through Medicaid, or is that something that the court has to fund as well?
Well, it depends on, you know, a lot of these people are just getting a job for the first time in many years.
Yeah.
And a lot of these jobs are not the best jobs that provide insurance. So most of the time it is through Medicaid that they're having these things paid. So, you know, not everything's covered through Medicaid.
Right.
So then that's a barrier too and an issue.
Yeah.
But the court system doesn't pay for that.
Right.
We always make sure they have insurance of some kind as soon as they get in drug court, and our probation officer and treatment provider do the intakes for everyone, and they make sure they connect them immediately, because we're looking for, an inpatient treatment program for them to go to, and they can't go unless they have some kind of insurance.
Yeah.
So,
Do you send them out of state sometimes, or just different parts of the state?
we have to keep them in the state of Illinois.
Gotcha.
While they're on drug court, because they're on probation, and you're not allowed to leave the state of Illinois
yes.
when you're on probation,
Gotcha.
unless you have, specific permission and a court order on you that says that you can leave.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How was the pandemic? People difficult to achieve mental health visits, and new patient starts and visits kind of went to the wayside, and people went to virtual medical care, both for talk therapy and also for medication management. How did the pandemic for the last 3 years, how did that affect drug courts or mental health treatments for your clients?
It's been pretty awful.
Yes.
We anytime you take someone who has mental health issues and you take them out of their routine that they have every day, it's really bad.
Yeah.
So managing an illness like that is very difficult, but being in a routine and trying to control certain things, I think, really helps people mentally.
It does. That's
And
correct.
so when you get people out of that routine and they're not in that routine any longer, it just makes it so much more difficult. And then just, more free time on your hands, and
Yes.
you're bored and
Right.
looking for something interesting to do,
Yes.
So yes, we had a lot of problems with people, and I tried to be very patient with people throughout that process, but it was very difficult for all of us.
Yeah, all the mental health, everything, physical health, mental health. I it was just kind of a lot of stuff was deferred, delayed, less excellent care just for the last 3 years, no matter who you were, whether you had mental health or addiction or not. Yeah, same issues. The question about free will, this is a little existential thing. I'm not sure which way that Vanessa wants to go, but in terms of questions, but kind of this concept of that people have the ability to improve their lives if they choose to do so, and that's why we're here in this case. But you're extra special. You recognize that it's not just enough for them to will it or want it, which is kind of where we get into trouble with a lot of medical issues, but they have to have help, sometimes clinical help, medications and talk therapies and other techniques. How do you perceive, free will for people with addictions, let's say, or mental health stuff with or without addictions?
Well, I think the most surprising thing to me sometimes is when people, they stop using drugs, and when we always have a question of the day in drug court, and it's usually something kind of deep that you have to think about and come up with an answer about. And it is just shocking to me how intelligent and how insightful some of my people in drug court are, and how it takes so much time and effort to help them recognize sometimes that they are, designed with a purpose in this life, and that they have all kinds of opportunities to change their life now. And that, it's just so nice to see them kind of blossoming into this beautiful flower, out of this really dark place that they've been for many, many years.
Yes.
And see them starting to understand, I am a good person.
Yeah.
I can do stuff to help other people.
Yeah.
I might be smart enough to get that GED finally, or I might be able to enroll in college. And wow, look at this! I'm doing really well in college. I can't believe I'm doing this. Or I got this great job, raising money for universities, and I'm really good at it, and I get a bonus for that. And just trying to try to fill these people up with all of the things that we recognize that they, the capabilities that they have. And then trying to get them to channel that energy into the proper direction so that it's used for something good, in their life.
It's people would
and
say.
I think there's
go ahead. Go ahead. No, please complete. Yes.
Well, I'm just going to say I see so many of them now starting to realize that, and they'll come in here and they'll say, you know what, I'm really proud of myself. I'm a good person anymore, and I'm helping other people do this and that, and I'm able to do this or that. And I think that, by having all the drug court team present, and then having the treatment provider and the probation officer, and hearing good things from the prosecutor sometimes even, and the judge and the public defender, starts filling people up with good things about them, and they start believing, I am good and I can do better, and and that's what they need. A lot of these people that I have in court have never had that in their entire life. They've never had someone tell them, you're smart, or you're capable, or they've never. Now, some of them do have a decent support system, but most of them don't. So
a lot of this stuff sounds remedial, but it's like childhood. Like they missed all these milestones, all these supports, and all these milestones, and unfortunately, they're having to kind of you're having to do it as an adult and through the kind of the legal system to kind of check these childhood milestones, and then life skills, a lot of stuff, basic stuff to help them get through their day. Yeah, it's amazing.
I hear so much just compassion in the way that you talk about people, Judge Weber, and it's beautiful and delightful to hear that. It's also not what I expected to hear from a judge. I think when people think of a judge, we think of someone who's tasked with passing judgment literally and punishing people for doing things, whether they are mistakes or whether they're born out of addiction or trauma or, anything else that might explain people's behavior. And also what you're doing in your drug court sounds like a very restorative and rehabilitative program. I'm wondering if, law enforcement or the court system in general has something to learn from this model, and do you think anybody else, any of your peers who are not necessarily doing drug court but maybe just working with different high need populations, are they seeing the success of what you're doing here and thinking about ways that they can apply some of that?
I think you're either going to be compassionate about this or you're not. And if you're not, then you're not going to have a drug court or a mental health court or any of these courts in your county.
Sure.
And I don't know that there's any amount of talking to people. We actually had a drug court in every county in our circuit until recently. And, some of the judge, and it's up to the resident circuit judge in your county whether you're going to have the court or not. That's my position in my county.
Okay.
And the drug courts were, for a while, they were mandatory for the state of Illinois, and then they dropped that. And then once they dropped it, we had, I think, 3 counties that dropped drug court in the Second Circuit. And it was up to the resident circuit judge whether they did that.
Okay.
And there were several different, judges on an email that, put out our statistics and all of the reasons why we thought that was a mistake for them to do that. And they went ahead and did it anyway.
What were those judges' reasons for wanting to eliminate that program, just to divert the funds back to law enforcement? And
no, I don't think it's that. I think it's more just, you only have so much time in the day to do so much work. And I think some of the people feel like that we're devoting a lot of resources for not very many people.
Yeah.
And they feel like the resources should be utilized for everyone rather than just these, few people that we have in drug court. But, when you think like that, you're really missing the bigger picture here of, the generational, it's not just their criminal case. It is their juvenile abuse and neglect case because they have kids and they're not taking care of them. And then we're talking about, when their kids get older, having juvenile delinquent cases. I mean, it just, it
compounds on itself.
It does. It multiplies.
There's something. There's something out there called we talk about genetics in general, and then there's something called epigenetics. And Vanessa and I've done a little podcast about this, but the concept. This is the concept that not only may you get some genes that cause problems, medical problems, physical, emotional problems, but there's epigenetic changes, which includes everything from doing drugs to stress to trauma. That also affects how your genes are turned on and off. And so what I think we're going to see in the criminology and sociology literature, as well as some of the genetics in the next 20 years, is that we're going to see some of these effects that you say are intergenerational. We talk about transgenerational and intergenerational trauma that we can see as an epigenetic effect. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing. People are going to start touting that this is the reason why people can't get better or improve their situation in life, and sometimes uses as an explanation, sometimes uses as an excuse. But I think you're going to see more of this genetic and epigenetic information out in society now, and so it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, this is the work that you've done without having physicians and other PhD researchers and stuff like that do is really kind of mental health work. It's just part of the legal system. So
it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
That kind of brings me back to a question that came to me when you were talking about how people can get involved with how they can participate in drug court. So you said they can be referred by just anyone in the population. Does someone have to be charged with a crime in order to participate in drug court, or could they literally be referred to this program just for rehabilitation in general?
No, they do have to have a felony offense.
Okay.
So it has to be a crime, that's a pretty serious offense. Most drug charges are class 3 and 4 felonies in Illinois.
Okay.
Just so you have an idea, class 3 felony, you can be in prison for 2 to 5 years. And if you're extended term eligible, I won't get into what that means, but that means you've had previous felonies within so much of a period of time. But a class 3 felony, if you're in that extended range, could be up to 10 years.
Wow.
And then a class 4 felony is 1 to 3 years in the ordinary range, could be up to 6 years if you're in the extended range. So that's mostly the people that we're dealing with. But just like this morning, I did a class 2 felony that could be anywhere from 3 to 14 years in prison.
Wow.
So we only take non-violent, non-sex offenders into drug court.
Yeah, I figured that you'd have to have some restrictions. Yeah, you'd have to have some restrictions about violence, etc. Yeah, amazing stuff. I don't think the average citizen knows that this is happening unless they're involved with it because of friends or family and stuff like that. I don't think people understand. I know we're on this side of the river, we're on the Missouri side, but I'm sure this is the same skeleton that the outline for any drug court is kind of what you've just outlined, with variations obviously, but yeah, the responsibility and the team approach. And with the stick and the carrot, a little bit of punitive potential, but a lot of carrot, a lot of support.
Absolutely. So, Judge Weber, as we wrap here, where do you think we're going? Where do you think you're going with this? Where do you think the drug court is headed? What future do you see for the population that you serve, and also for this kind of structure for the courts?
I see that. I do think the state of Illinois is very supportive at this time of treatment courts, and I see the future being more treatment courts and less, of other kind of courts, just because, the results are pretty astounding when you look at the statistics that I gave you earlier.
Right.
And we are the people who see these people, front and center, like at their worst time in their life.
Yeah.
And if we can intervene, in those moments, I had a guy today that I accepted into drug court. He's around 50 years old. And he has been in drug court for about 3 months now, I guess. And he's doing extremely well. He's in a different town right now, but we can see him. He can come to court by Zoom, so he doesn't have to drive back and forth.
Okay.
And then we have someone monitoring him where he is.
Yeah.
So we know what's going on because we have a person monitoring and a probation officer over there. And he told me today, he said, it's so sad that I didn't get to be part of this program 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because this is
Lifetime.
exactly what I needed,
Right.
you know.
It is.
And just to think about all those people, you know, that we've had missed opportunities with over the years where
Yes.
we've not had something like this, and he spent his whole life in prison.
Wow.
Yeah.
His entire adult life he's been in prison on drug charges.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're already living it, and that's and unfortunately sometimes when families, because I see multiple generations within one family, and they'll tell me about their kid that I'm also taking care of, who don't know what to do with them. They've done this, they've tried to overdose, and you know, and I'll tell them. And unfortunately, I said sometimes being in, you know, arrested is sometimes the way to, not that you can't get drugs in jails and prisons, but sometimes that's the way to get into the mental health system, is to unfortunately be arrested. I hate to say that because the family feels like they can't control anything, and unfortunately the police have to intervene. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because almost every time I have a drug court graduation, I have tried to invite the officers who arrested
Right.
my people in drug court, because they want to thank them.
Yeah. Yeah.
They always
Wow.
say, if that hadn't happened, I would not be here today, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to go through drug court.
Yeah.
You know, they appreciate it in hindsight.
Yeah, it's very hard, like you said. Whenever you're a young judge, it's you feel like you maybe do something wrong because of how real the tears seem to be and the anger and but you're right. Unfortunately, I tell people their brain has been hijacked. It's like with a parasite that's not going to let you do what you need to do to take care of yourself, your now or your family or your future. And that's when you intervene, and you essentially take away a lot of their autonomy and say, you're going to be here every week. You're going to have to do this. You have to do your drug screens. So you take away their autonomy so that they can hopefully kind of hard reset back into some sort of a path that they can, that's more healthful for themselves and for society. Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. It's what an eye-opening experience. I knew a little bit about it, but that's why we needed to talk to you, since so I hope that you continue great success in the Second Circuit and in Southern Illinois, and
Continued retention.
Yeah, and hopefully everything that you do kind of it rubs off on other counties and other circuits.
Yeah. I think you've
Thank
been
you
a
very
very
much.
you've been a very unique guest for us, Judge Weber. Obviously, we like to have a lot of people here who are advocates for people in need, and it's amazing to have somebody on the law enforcement side of things express that as well. And it creates a hopeful feeling for where things are headed in the future. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I really appreciated it, and I enjoyed this today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. All right. So thanks so much, Judge Jo Beth Weber, for joining us today. As always, we love your guys' feedback and response from our show. You can reach out to us, send us a message, your feedback, questions to the notyourdocpod@gmail.com. You could check us out on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook. And we also are at our website, notyourdoc.com, where you can check out all of the different episodes that we've done, interviews with people, as well as Dr. Tadros' original blog, Not Your Doc. We'll see you again next time. Thanks so much, Seth. Thanks, Dr. Tadros. I'm Vanessa. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Thanks again. This previous podcast represents my opinions and the opinions of my guests. This is not medical advice, and I'm not establishing a physician-patient relationship with any listener. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only, and because each patient is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions that you may have.